Welcome to my channel. So today, I'm now in the area of colonialism. So if you have been with our channel, we have been covering the area of reparations required and compensation. And I was talking about slavery for the past 2 weeks, 2 episodes. Now today, like I promised, I'm in the area of colonialism. So there are some things about colonialism which are not discussed very much. People only focus on slavery, but colonialism has ravaged Africa, and even to date, there are some problems people are facing in East Africa and even West Africa. So I want to start with the area of jiggers. I look at jiggers and even crows, house crows, some birds called crows. These things were introduced by colonialists. So today I shall look at the effect of jiggers up to today, and how it has led to poverty, and even the effect of crows, birds, which are ravaging farms. So these two things have brought poverty to date to Africa. And Africa have been forced to look for loans from the same colonialist countries to bring money and even pesticides to come and help us solve these problems that they are the ones who caused. So let's look at the impact of jiggers and house crows in Africa. Jiggers and house crows were introduced by colonialists, and their effect is being felt to date, and they are paying. So let's look at jiggers. These are Citizen newspaper publication, which is a nation media group. Citizen, they wrote a story about how jiggers were brought to Africa 150 years ago, and now even today, we need an apology from those colonial countries for introducing jiggers. So these things are not covered. They're not very much covered by the world media. In fact, there's kind of a cover up or a silence to cover them up. But the jiggers menace is a big problem. So here's a picture of people, some officials of a Hardy Trust Kenya, trying to provide medicine for children who are facing jiggers infestation in Kilifi, Kenya's coastal area. So this newspaper says that there was a trader called Thomas Mitchell who brought jiggers to Africa 150 years ago. And therefore the colonialists have to apologize and even compensate. So 1872 September, Thomas Mitchell, a lone British vessel, sailed from Brazil carrying sand ballast. It docked at the African port of Ambriz in Angola, which was then famous for ivory, coffee, and slaves. This ship was built at Dumbarton on the River Clyde in 1851 and was owned by T. Mitchell, a shipping company based in Glasgow, Scotland, the British city built from the fortunes of trading in slaves. So this ship brought jiggers to Africa. So that sand that was carried in this ship, that sand was the one that contained the jiggers. So Thomas Mitchell had dropped his cargo in Brazil, cargo of coal in Brazil from Britain. Since there was no cargo destined for Africa, it had carried sand ballast used to add weight to the vessel so that when the wind hits its sails, it does not capsize. So they carried the sand from Brazil to add weight to make the ship stable against the wind. So this sand, because jiggers were most common in Brazil and South America, this ship brought the sand to Africa. Now this sand, instead of it being poured in the sea, so when this ship came and arrived at Angola from Brazil, this sand was supposed to be poured into the ocean, whereby the jiggers would have been killed by the ocean water, the salty ocean water. But the sand was poured on the seashore of Angola, And therefore, the Jiggers began to move because the Jiggers were in those sand. The Jiggers began to move, and after a short time, most of the people in that area began to complain of having Jiggers. That's how the Jiggers began to arrive in Africa. So the Jiggers went from the sand, which was poured on the seashore, to the people's homes and villages. Now Jiggers, they breed very fast. They spread very fast over a long distance. So within a short time, they had spread from the seashore to people's houses and people's feet. Jiggers are very bad because they lead to people's feet and even limbs to be amputated. So that's how Jiggers arrive in Africa. Through a colonial ship. Either they were careless or deliberate. I don't know. Maybe it was an accident. But the Jiggers have spread to date. And I believe that Angola was the first place where the Jiggers arrived like that. But the British ships, they were using such sand in many other coasts, even Mombasa. Even Mombasa and Dar es Salaam. And that's how Jiggers spread to these areas. And wherever they went with these things, they carried those Jiggers, most likely. So here's this picture is Kilifi, Mombasa, near Mombasa in Kenya, which is near the coast. But also colonialists, if they carried such sand and such things which had Jiggers, and they took them to wherever they went in their colonial enterprise, they spread the Jiggers like that. That's why Jiggers are found in every African country where British were colonizing. Jiggers are found. So today, almost 200 years after colonialism, Jiggers are still there, ravaging the communities. That's why there's a need for apology. So here's a CNN website report how the parasite of Jiggers keeps people in poverty to date. It was a documentary about Africa family in central Kenya. So some children are forced to fall out of school, drop out of school because of Jiggers, because they can't study. You can't study when Jiggers are attacking your feet and limbs. So here's a testimony of one person who was in Kenya there. He struggled to study as a child because of Jiggers, but he was able to use the pesticide used for cows to wash his feet, wash his limbs, and therefore to control the Jiggers infestation. But many of his classmates did not succeed. The Jiggers even ate away their legs and even their feet, and they dropped out of school. But this guy, Kamau, he was able to survive because of the pesticide used by his father to wash cows. That pesticide was able to control Jiggers. So he managed to go to school, up to university in India, and then he came back and formed an NGO to deal with this Jigger infestation. So Jigger infestation to date, it is keeping millions in poverty. It's a big problem. In central Kenya, in Tanzania, Uganda, we have those issues. Even Central Africa, West Africa, Jiggers are there. But they were not there in Africa before. They were brought by colonialists. That's why colonialists are supposed to offer an apology to African countries and help eradicate this Jigger menace and also pay compensation for the poverty problem caused by Jiggers. So Jiggers is a colonial legacy, just like slavery. Jiggers is a colonial legacy that we can't run away from it. So Jiggers were brought to Africa 150 years ago, and we need an apology from the colonialists for the Jigger menace. Now, another area that has caused poverty and is a big problem among farmers is house crow. house crow are some birds. They look like eagle or dove, but they are different. They are different variety. They are very common in the coastal areas. I know they're even spreading in Africa, even in the mainland of Africa. So house crows were not African birds. They are known to eat waste. They are more of scavengers. They eat waste. But unfortunately, they breed so fast. And then they also attack crops. So because of their breeding, they not only scavenge, but they even destroy crops. So where did they come from? House crows. House crow. So these are a website from Tanzania, Andrea Tigel. So crows were imported to clean up Zanzibar over a century ago. So they were imported. They are not an African birds. But today, their descendants are threatening to invade Africa. So they're causing a problem. There's an outcry, even among farmers, as we shall see later. So house crow was not a characteristic of an Africa or Zanzibar or Dar es Salaam. But the first few pairs arrived to nearby Zanzibar by a boat from India in 1880s. So the most likely account is that 2 British diplomats ordered the crow scavengers to be brought to Tanzania to clean up the island's mounting waste. So they were brought to Zanzibar in Tanzania to help clean up the waste. So like I've said, crows are scavengers. So they were brought by those British diplomats from India to clean up the waste. At that time, the Zanzibar island was full of stench, squalor, disease, and misery. These problems had only just closed down Zanzibar's open slave markets. So Zanzibar was a slave market. And this stench and squalor disease was making that slave market to lose customers. So these British diplomats who wanted to increase that slave trade, they ordered the crows to be brought from India to come and eat up this stench and garbage. As a result, the crows began to multiply so much, so they were imported. Now, even in other places like Kenya, Tanzania mainland, also crows were brought by the colonialists to come and clean up the garbage, to eat garbage, etc. But now crows also eat crops. They eat crops. And that has led to serious crop problem because they eat crop, they eat maize, corn, beans, watermelons. So it's a big problem in the city and even in the countryside because the crows destroy the environment so much. Yeah. So it's a big problem. So ecologists are complaining. They're saying that there's 1.3 million house crows in Zanzibar. Which means that they're almost matching the human population. And these scavengers, the crows, came from India and they were brought by British diplomats in the 1880s to tackle the waste problem of Zanzibar. In 1970s, the house crows were officially declared a pest because they had grown so much. But today they continue to thrive and they're extending their rule to mainland Tanzania and even Kenya. So they're big, so they grow very fast. They breed so fast. So house crows, they have established their breeding population in 28 countries in Africa. And their main food source is human organic waste. But they can adapt to radically varying environments as long as humans are present. So they're highly intelligent birds. They are members of the COVID family and have been known to use tools, solve complex problems, recognize human faces, and even hold grudge. So they're very intelligent birds. They're very intelligent. So in Tanzania, house crows have many traits. They're very efficient. They're ruthless colonizers. They work in teams. They attack whole flocks of other birds, like even chickens. They kill chickens. They eat their eggs. They damage poultry farms, and they destroy crops. So as human populations grow and accumulate more waste, the colonizing potential of house crows increases, especially in the absence of natural predators. So even in urban areas, they're there. You'll find them where the garbage is dumped. They're there. In the rural areas, they're also there. They destroy crops. So these birds were brought to Africa by colonialists to help to minimize waste. But now they've become a serious pest in the rural areas. They are a big enemy of farmers. Farmers complain of their crops being damaged by these crows. This is another area which is a colonial legacy. Apart from jiggers, crows too is a colonial legacy. Yeah. Yeah, so African countries are independent. That's how we are told. They're all independent. They celebrate their independence days. Like Kenya will celebrate ours on 12th of December. So we are independent, yes. But these things like jiggers, they tend to keep us in poverty. They keep Africans in poverty. So even though we are independent, but African families have to struggle so much just to be healthy with jiggers menace. And there seems to be a conspiracy of silence. Our governments don't talk about this jigger menace so much. It's like a well-kept secret. But it was brought by the colonialists. So for example, if you are an African man or a mother, you have to budget for money for jiggers for your children before you can even think of taking them to school, because they can't go to school when they are itching themselves with jiggers on their fingers, on their feet. So because of this, so much money is spent on buying the medicine for jiggers, which is expensive. This makes these families to be at a poverty level. So this really affects African households. And very many kids are forced to drop out of school because their parents can't afford the medicine for jiggers. It's up to NGOs that have come up that are helping to solve this problem. Apart from children, even some elders, old people, they are struggling with these jiggers. It's very common in the rural areas. In the rural areas, where the mountainous areas like central Kenya, northern Tanzania, they are very common. It's a big problem. But imagine so far there has been no permanent solution to jiggers problem in Africa. It is ravaging communities, leaving them in poverty, because these medicines are very expensive. And it's up to those European countries again, they're the ones who each manufacture this medicine for jiggers. Which means that even though we are independent from colonialism, but we still depend on those European countries for the medicine for jiggers, and they're the ones which introduced to Africa. Again, they have to help us again to solve this jiggers problem. Just like we are not independent really, but we are still being colonized. Even though the Europeans left, but they left their jiggers in Africa to keep on ravaging the communities. Because that's the reality. That's why those colonial countries, they owe us an apology and compensation to help fight these problems of jiggers in the rural areas. Because in their countries, there's no jigger problems. So they introduce jiggers, but in their countries, jiggers is not there. So that's the reality. It's a big problem. Now, the house crows is another problem, which was introduced maybe with a good intention to help control waste. But then even jiggers may have been introduced accidentally. Who knows? So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Even house crows were brought to fight waste in the coastal island of Zanzibar, which was a slave market, because the waste and the squalor in Zanzibar was affecting the economy of Zanzibar in those days, which was depending on slave trade. Slaves, customers, and slave ships, they were avoiding Zanzibar because of too much waste. That's why the British diplomats, they had to import house crows to help eat up the waste. But now the house crows have bred so much, and they're not even ravaging farms and destroying poultry, among other things. So house crows are a big problem in the cities, in the urban areas, and even the rural areas, because they are scavengers and they are dirty. They cause diseases in the urban areas, and they destroy crops in the rural areas. They destroy whole plantation because the house crows travel in millions, like this picture here on the right, this picture. So imagine your farm plantation will have no escape from these ravaging scavengers. So it's a big problem. So jiggers affect people's feet and limbs, and then the house crows ravage farms. Now crows don't discriminate. They eat maize, watermelons, tomatoes like this one here. They eat tomatoes. They eat rice, grains, cereals. There's a big problem. So these jiggers, house crows, so I know there are many other problems, but today I've just chosen to focus on jiggers and house crows, which were both introduced by colonialists. Maybe they had a good intention in those days, but they had not foreseen the long-term negative effect these pests will have in the lives of Africans. So today, African countries are battling with these things. That's why it's very hard for African countries to grow economically to the level they're supposed to be as independent countries. That's why colonialists owe Africans an apology for these pests, and then there's need for reparations and compensation so that this problem can be solved, eradicated, and then they should help Africans start over. It's like, otherwise, we are not really independent. We are not independent if you have this colonial legacy pests. So this is a big problem. And I look at something else next time, some other colonial legacy problem. Today I just chose on jiggers and house crows, but there are many other things. They even a rumor about smallpox, sickness being brought by colonialists, sleeping sickness, whether it was brought by Italians in Eritrea, I don't know, but I'll research more on that. But jiggers and house crows, that's a known fact. There's no debate. So that's my talk for today. Let me see your comments in the comment section. But I chose on this because people are thinking that only slavery is a big problem, but even colonialism is a major problem. And even today, African countries are more of like under colonialism, but in a different way. Through these pests, they have made Africans to delay and to be under bondage of poverty, not to grow, because they are battling these problems every time. So jiggers and crows, among other pests, they are all over Africa, all over. For years, decades, there's been no solution. There's a big problem. So let me see your comments in the comment section. And if you know of any other pest in Africa which was brought by colonialists, you can let me know in the comment section. and share your ideas on this and other things. Otherwise, thank you very much.